Coming up this week on Success Won't Come Calling.
It wasn't a decision I took lightly to have the leg amputated, but it was probably one of the most important and biggest decisions in my life because it's given me my life back. I'm back to being the old Andy now who goes to the gym, goes on runs, I'm out walking the dog, climbing mountains, just doing the stuff I used to do before I got injured, and I would never have had that life if I never had an amputated. It was a big life lesson to, sometimes you need to take back control of your life.
Hello friends, hope you're well. Simon Gibson here. Podcast is SWCC. If you like this podcast, please click subscribe on YouTube. You just heard a few words from my guest this week, who I'm so pleased has agreed to come on because his story is just so central to what we talk about on the podcast every week. You just heard a few words from him then. I'm glad to say there's going to be many, many more from him now. Andy Grant, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks, mate.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for wanting to hear me.
You're very welcome. So the book, first of all, is called You'll Never Walk. Mm-hmm. We're going to put a link to that on our own socials, guys. Obviously, it's the time of year when we've all got vouchers, or we'll shortly have vouchers knocking around, and a bit of money, and we're looking to spend them wisely. It is a really, really great read. I can't recommend it enough. And it showcases Andy's really inspirational story. But also, obviously we'll come on to all of your experiences shortly. But one of the things which really impressed me about the book was it was very personal. It wasn't just sort of event-based. It was. It really did talk about how you felt at certain points in your life. How did you approach the writing experience?
Thankfully, it wasn't me who wrote it.
All right, cool.
It wouldn't have been as good if I'd wrote it. One of my best friends, a guy called Phil Reed, who is a very good friend of mine, he ghost wrote the book. His first book that he'd done, and it went on to get nominated. For Sports Book of the Year. So he really done an amazing job, and I think the reason it did work so well was because it was so personal. I always knew that after being blown up in Afghanistan, I kind of always wanted to write a book, but I didn't want to write a book about being blown up in Afghanistan because, as cool as it might be for us to chat about it now and stuff, I personally know 50 lads who've been blown up in Afghanistan, and it's not exciting to me. Do you know what I mean? It was a kind of story that I've been told a million times. So I wanted to wait until I'd done something I felt that redefined getting blown up in Afghanistan. I didn't want to be judged on that one bad day in the office. So after I broke the world record, the 10K, I thought, okay, I've done something now which is half cool. I can talk about it. And when I sat down with Phil, he was really keen to kind of get that across as well, that this local lad from Bootle who's had a bit of a interesting life. And I think for me, that was the thing that's probably got the most compliments of people saying it's got your voice and it's just like you talking, telling the story. And again, I can't take any credit for that. That's all down to Phil.
Have you ever thought about doing an audiobook version of it?
Funnily enough, yeah. That's just as if I've just teared you up to say that. But no, I think, through kind of my own studio podcast, I'm gonna do it. But I'm just gonna put it on Patreon. We have a Patreon system on our podcast, and I'm just gonna record it. Don't know if you've seen a David Goggins book, but he kind of does his chapter. But then at the end, him and the ghostwriter have a little chat. So what I'm gonna do in the new year is record it. But then at the end of each chapter, whoever it kind of maybe involves, get them on for just a little mini podcast almost, and just do it that way. So. Are you going to read it? Because
I think that's really important that you do.
Yeah.
Because of that point that you just made about it being so personal, and you've got a great voice as well. So some people bring professional speaker types in, which I just don't think work as well as the author reading it.
I think it'll be hard, and sometimes I've got a little 7-year-old, and when I was reading to her the other day, I joked and said, I'll read the chapter that's named after you, Alba. And I was my voice started to break and a big lump in my throat, and then she started crying, I started crying and stuff. So I think it will be quite difficult to read. But I think what you've just said then, having my own personal touch on it. And then the added bit where some chapters I'm speaking to my dad maybe about when my mum passed away, or my sisters about when they got told I was blown up, or even Phil, the ghostwriter himself, and said, how did you kind of go through this challenge of trying to describe this and that. So that's the plan.
So you've just really given us a whistle-stop tour there through many of the experiences which you've gone through, and Why don't we go straight for the first point, the incident in Afghanistan? So by this point, you'd been in the Marines for some years. There's a fantastic picture of Andy on his Instagram, Jacob. With have you got one, Andy? And you'd already been to Iraq by this point, hadn't you?
Yeah.
First of all, how did the experience of Iraq sort of differ, or did it differ from what you saw in Afghanistan?
There was no comparisons whatsoever with Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, in Iraq, we were there with the Americans. We were on a base where it was all about hearts and minds. It was about just to kind of train and mentor and coach the Iraqi Marines and the Iraqi Navy in the hope that when we left, Iraq would be in a better place. I never had to fire my weapon once in anger. We had a swimming pool. We had nice food. We had, because there was an American kind of like large contingency of Americans, Costco, if you've been to Costco, you've got those big chocolate cakes. I had one of them every single day, for me dessert. That's how chilled out Iraq was like. In Afghanistan, I think I went 6 weeks without eating a piece of fruit. It was just, living on rations in the middle of nowhere, like the Wild West, getting shot at most days. The base was getting attacked most days. Pretty dangerous. So yeah, there was just no comparison whatsoever with Iraq and Afghanistan.
And was that at the height of the conflict?
Yeah, so I was out there the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, and don't get me wrong, we knew it was bad at the time. It's only when you look back in hindsight, I think it was 108 British soldiers were killed in 2009 alone, and they say on average for every one that was killed, there was 7 or 8 that are seriously injured. So that's, nearly 900 soldiers seriously injured just in 1 year alone. So we knew at the time it was dangerous. It's only when you look back, you realise, we were in the worst possible place at the worst possible time.
And in terms of the day in question, when you suffered such a serious injury, why don't you just talk us through sort of how the day started and what happened?
It was actually a really funny day. So it started off funny anyway. We were sitting down for breakfast, or the night before, I should say. We had a briefing of what we were going to do, and basically the Taliban were in a certain area, and the plan was to get up early hours in the pitch black, get in position, and then as soon as first light comes, we'd be there to give them the good news, essentially. There was a team that went off to the west and a team that went off to the east. The team that was going off to the west had to leave a little bit earlier, and I happened to be on the team on the east. So initially in the meeting beforehand, I was thinking, happy days, I get another hour in bed. Wake up the next morning at, I think it was maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, have a quick bowl of porridge, and one of my best mates, Ian, sit next to me, and our other best mate, Brian, says, I've just had this nightmare that Ian, you get blown up. And Ian's like, fucking cheers, mate, nice one. I'm just kind of giggling away, and that put a little kind of funny start to the day, if you like. Half an hour later, we're getting our kit on, we're patrolling out again, 5:30 in the morning at this point, pitch black, and we're just kind of going to get into position. We're just crossing a series of kind of irrigation ditches and fields, and you're just kind of barely following the man in front, because again, it's just so dark. I'm following in Ian's footsteps, and then he just turned to me and said, Andy, we need to get over this ditch at some point. I said, mate, I'm right behind you whenever you're good to go. And at this point, I'm just kind of waiting for Ian to pick a part of the field ready to jump. He finally does stop and says, we're going to go here. And I said, right, okay, and almost steadied myself next to Ian. Ian takes a run and jump. As I'm about to jump next, that's when I just heard 2 of the loudest bangs I've ever heard, and everything went pitch black. And unfortunately, what Ian didn't see was on the other side of the ditch, in between the 2 trees, there was a tripwire. This tripwire was attached to 2 bombs. So he's jumped, tripwires went off, 2 bombs went off in between us, blowing him forward and blowing me back. And obviously in that split second, my whole life changed forever. I suffered 27 separate injuries, from shrapnel to my face, broken sternum, broken elbow, chunks out both forearms, severed my femoral artery, which they say you bleed to death within 6 minutes, chunk out my left leg, broke both lower legs, and then severe nerve damage to both hands and both feet. Ian, on the other hand, got blown like across the ditch. So he didn't end up as badly injured as me, but the blast kind of blew him away. And then for the next 40 minutes, I remember the whole, morning perfect, and it was just a case of the guys getting to us as quickly as they could, patching me up, keeping me alive, doing everything they could to reassure me. And then after about 40 minutes or so, helicopter comes in, picks me up, and that's when I don't really remember much. Then they pump all the drugs, bloods and fluids into me, and then I wake up 2 weeks later, then back in the UK.
which is incredible. Let's just go back to the incident. Just let me sure I'm pitching this right. This was did you say it was a ditch you had to get over? So that, I would picture that you and Ian stood one side, literally like when you were kids, to jump over the ditch. Is that exactly what it's like?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, you've got to think there's a big line of us, so he's just the kind of first in the line, and we're just kind of ready to go after him. It's such a difficult job for the point man because he's got a metal detector trying to find any bombs. He's got his rifle in his other hand, and then I'm the second man, so I'm kind of his eyes and his ears, but at the same time, I don't want to be too close to him in case he gets blown up. So it's a kind of weird job of knowing where to stand and when to stand, and yet we're just kind of ready for him to take the lead. And obviously, I was the second man. That's why I ended up getting caught up in it.
And what were the mechanics of the way the bomb went up? Because you mentioned being blown backwards. Did you land on your back?
Yeah. So if you can imagine, you're jumping forwards. The bombs were kind of just off to the left-hand side. Right. So they've kind of blew him kind of that way and then blew me this way. And straight away, I remember falling back. But what you got to remember is I've got so much kit on. You're carrying probably, must be about 5 or 6 stone you're carrying on your back. And straight away, just fell back and just thought, fuck, I just knew I'd been blown up. And I just started screaming as loud as I could because, again, I knew I'd been blown up. I knew it was pitch black. And I didn't know whether the Taliban were going to be close by, ready to launch another attack. So I just started screaming as loud as I could.
Was that to attract attention from the others in terms of like a warning as much as anything, was it?
No, just to let them know where I was so they could come and get me. Because again, I didn't know whether I'd fell into the ditch. I didn't know whether I'd been blown 20 metres away. And I knew it was pitch black. So it was just a case of, lads, get to me like as quickly as you can almost. And I guess just a bit of, just a natural, fear of just what's just happened. Thankfully, I'd only fell back a metre or two, and I was kind of on the edge of the ditch almost. The guys got to me as quickly as they could and just started patching me up. And again, it was just a lot of me asking for reassurance initially, just saying, have I still got my arms and legs? Because even though I knew what was going on, I almost couldn't feel anything. I was just in shock and just screaming. And he just kept on saying, yeah, mate, you're all right, don't worry. And then I just kept on saying, lads, don't lie to me. Have I still got my arms and legs? He said, yeah, don't worry. I said, lads, please don't lie to me. And it was just a case of that for 10 minutes until eventually they calmed me down a bit. They pumped some morphine into me. And the first 10 minutes I didn't even really feel any pain. And then the next 10 minutes was a lot of pain. Just excruciating pain, not to any other injuries, just all down to my right leg. At this point, they put a tourniquet on. And obviously it's just like a belt, wrapping a belt around to stop the loss of blood. And I just knew something was really wrong with my right leg. I was saying, lads, are you sure I've still got my right leg? Because it's fucking killing. And I thought I'd lost the leg because they put a tourniquet on normally in experiences I've been in. You only place a tourniquet on once they've lost a limb. So I knew it must have been bad. It was a catastrophic bleed to know that they needed the tourniquet if the leg was still on. And just a lot of pain for the next 10 minutes. And then the kind of final 10 minutes, I just started feeling really sleepy. At this point I'd lost a lot of blood. And I just knew that if a helicopter didn't come in soon to pick me up, I probably wouldn't have survived.
Did you have a sense at that point of the severity of your injuries in terms of, obviously you've referred to wanting that check done, that you hadn't immediately lost a limb. Did you still, you've mentioned so many different injuries that you had. Were you aware of like the extent of those and just how much had been impacted? No,
didn't have a clue. No, I just knew I'd been blown up. I knew my right leg was killing me, and that was it. I didn't have any idea of all my other injuries and anything. It was only then a couple of weeks later when I woke up from my coma, and they kind of just go through a list and say, these are all your injuries. This is the kind of prognosis for it. This is what we think will happen. But at the time, no, I had no idea of the severity at all.
In those moments after the injury, before you sort of got onto the helicopter, what state are you in mentally?
I think, in the movies, I guess people maybe think that it's all maybe heroic and it's all maybe certain things get said and it's all very, romanticised. Not romanticised, but it's all quite... The fact of the matter is it's the lads kind of give me a bit of shit, keep trying to keep me talking and just like, we had a 5-a-side football tournament going and we were quite good, my team, me and Ian, the lads who got injured, were quite good at football. It's a case of, Andy, you won't be playing football no more now, will you? You know, just that dark kind of squaddy humour kind of thing, that just trying to keep me awake and talking to me. And yeah, there was no great pearls of wisdom and nothing like that. It was just a case of, I'm lying half naked in this muddy field in Afghanistan, just being blown up, and the guys are trying to take the piss and have a laugh and do everything they can just to keep me breathing. And then eventually a helicopter comes in. I hear the helicopter come in. It lands not far from me. And at that point, I'm just thinking, thank God I'm still breathing. And I'm getting put on the helicopter, because there was an unwritten rule where if you were still breathing when you got put on the helicopter, the likelihood is you would survive. So I was just kind of just really grateful that I was still with it when the helicopter come in. And my mindset wasn't a case of I think I'm going to die. It was just talking to the lads, thinking, right, bloody hell, I hope this helicopter hurries up. There was no great kind of, I don't know, you know when you watch a movie and it's very dramatised and stuff. It was just a case of being really cold, in pain, feeling a bit sleepy, just waiting for a helicopter.
And you're just in the moment, aren't you, I suppose, then?
Yeah.
And it sounds to me that your colleagues there, you know, did a great job in terms of both applying the tourniquet, but also keeping you in reasonable spirits, keeping you awake.
Yeah, no, they did. Yeah, you know, obviously medical wise, it was a guy, James Smith, who wasn't in the Marines. He was in the army. He'd done an amazing job. He was the guy who placed the tourniquet on, and all the other the kind of bandages and first field dressings. So yeah, they'd done an amazing job physically on me, but then also mentally, just kept me talking, kept me with it, and I wouldn't be sitting here now if it wasn't for them. Not only the guys who were there, but the guys who were offering all round protection. You know, the guys who were calling in the helicopters. The guys who, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of people who I will never ever get to thank, who played such an amazing role in that, in getting me back safe. And the helicopter pilots, the not nurses and doctors on the helicopter, to the nurses and doctors in Camp Bastion, the pilot who brings me home, you know, the ambulance then who drives me from Birmingham Airport into the hospital. There's just hundreds of people who played an unbelievable role in keeping me alive that day.
And how about Ian? Is he okay? He's still mates with him?
Yeah, still best mates with him now. Yeah,
Good.
Still give him a bit of shit for getting the one who got us blown up. I used to do that in the motivational speaking, but it didn't go down well, because so when I tell this story in the speaking, and I kind of took it out because it didn't have the, it did sometimes, but it didn't always have the same effect. I used to say, it's a true story how it happened, but when I woke up from my coma 2 weeks later, Ian had woke up a few days before me, and he doesn't remember anything from that day. And he still doesn't now. And he says to me, Andy, you know, I've been waiting for you to wake up. You know, what happened? I said, what do you mean, what happened? He said, mate, I do not remember a thing. I've been waiting for you to wake up so you can explain to me, you know, what went on. And I looked at him and I went, you got us fucking blown up by jumping over that ditch. And when I used to say that in motivational talks, there was just this like silence. Don't think people make, sometimes you got to laugh, but I think because I've just told this really dramatic, you know, intense story about being blown up, and then straight away it's me taking the mick out of me mate, I don't think it got the kind of comedy that it maybe I hoped it would have. But so I've kind of took that out now. But yeah, it was true. He didn't really remember anything from the day. And yeah, I mean, listen, he's still one of my best mates now. I speak to him most days. Him and his wife, he's married now, got 2 kids, and I take my little girl on holiday with them. I kind of piggyback on their holidays with them. We've took our kids to Disneyland, to Spain, and just very fortunate with them. And yeah, there's no kind of, people ask me, you know, do I feel any anger towards Ian or anything? It was just a mistake that anyone could have made. It was just one of those things. And I'm almost grateful for what he done that day, because I've got a very nice life now. You know, I wouldn't change anything. So we're still best friends now. He recovered really well. He actually went back out to Afghanistan 2 years later, believe it or not, and he's now a firefighter up in Scotland.
Superb. Well, he sounds a top man. But as you say, it's to your credit that you've not clung on to any, you know, what could have been done differently type thoughts, because I mean the whole nature of the Taliban setting a tripwire is to catch people out, isn't it? And you know, that could probably have happened to anyone.
Yeah, I've got, like I say, a lot of friends who top soldiers, you know, who have been injured, and or sadly some have been killed, who are just unbelievable soldiers. And that's the thing about Afghanistan, you know, you need to be lucky every single second of every single day for 6 months. The Taliban need to be lucky once. And that's the rules of the game in Afghanistan. So it was just a bad day at the office, nothing anyone could do about it. And thankfully, it's all turned out all right.
Absolutely. Let's fast forward, because one of the things which really fascinates me about your story is that your decision that you would have your leg amputated was one which wasn't taken immediately and wasn't necessarily something which you were compelled to do. It was elective. It was a choice, which I think says a lot about you in terms of your reasons behind that. But was it 2 years after the injury when you had your leg amputated?
18 months, yeah.
Okay.
That's another a reason as well, and why I know we're going to speak about it a bit more, but the motivational speaking, that's why I find I've made a real success from that, because no disrespect to anyone else who's been blown up or been involved in a horrific thing and they've made a career in motivational speaking. Everyone's got a story, I believe, and if you can tell it well and inspire people, then great, and that's very important. But having my leg amputated, that was kind of my decision. You know, I took life back into my own hands, and that's where I kind of feel there's a lot of life lessons, because whether it's as extreme as having your leg amputated to take back control of your life, I've had people afterwards kind of say, God, I was in a toxic relationship and that kind of resonated with me. I needed to kind of cut loose. I was in a job for 20 years that I hated, and I use that analogy that you speak about your leg to kind of cut loose. So without doubt, that was one of the hardest decisions in my life, to have the leg amputated, because if a doctor tells you you've got cancer in your big toe and it's going to spread, so you need to have it amputated, I'd be chopping the toe off myself. You know, with my injury, it was a case of, look, we can, the leg will heal. You just won't be able to run, play football, climb mountains, but you'll have an all right quality of life. And for probably 90% of people, that's cool. That's fine. And I thought that'll be okay for a bit, but I will get better. After 18 months, it wasn't the life I wanted. I felt like I had so much unfulfilled potential. And I was becoming very jealous of other injured soldiers who had amputations and they were learning to ski, surf, they were climbing mountains. And here's me, I had my leg still. I was very grateful I still had my leg, but I couldn't do any of the cool things I used to do. So I always think back as well, it comes back to when I lost my mum at a young age. My mum passed away when I was 12, and I realised there and then, life is short. She was 36 when she passed away. And I thought, God, I don't want to live the rest of my life just having this dodgy leg that I can't do anything that I want to do. So it wasn't a decision I took lightly to have the leg amputated, but it was probably one of the most important and biggest decisions in my life, because it's given me my life back. I'm back to being the old Andy now who, goes to the gym, goes on runs, I'm out walking the dog, climbing mountains, just doing the stuff I used to do before I got injured. And I would never have had that life if I never had an amputated. And I think that's what, as well as telling the kind of story of being injured, I think when you go into the public speaking, you want to kind of give life lessons. And I think for me, that was a big life lesson. So, sometimes you need to, take back control of your life. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to make that decision. It was a real big decision to do that, because once it's done, it's done.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. From a clinical perspective, were you still under a consultant in relation to the functionality of your leg? And if so, was the consultant talking you through your options in terms of, do you have it amputated or don't you? What was the medical advice?
It was a weird one, because when I got injured, all the injured soldiers go down to Birmingham, and that's where they're all treated. Now, I happen to be good friends with a surgeon who's based in Plymouth. So he kind of wasn't my primary care. I got looked after in Birmingham. I just happened to be friends with this surgeon, who's one of the best surgeons in the country. So I'm good friends with the doc, and it's funny really, because it was an Indian lady, really small Indian lady called Miss Bose, an unbelievable woman. And she's the kind of master of these lizard off frames, they're called, a big, huge cage that went around my leg, which was basically reconstructed my leg. Now, from her point of view, as a surgeon, the operation was a success. The bone healed and the leg worked and I could walk. And so it's a success from a surgical point of view. But it wasn't a success because I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. So you kind of got to weigh up this kind of thing of, okay, yeah, it's worked, but it hasn't really worked, has it? Because I'm not happy. So I had this really weird thing where I was saying to the surgeon, what are the options for amputation? And she was kind of like, well, it's worked. You don't have to anymore.
Do you want to do that type of thing?
But I was like, I know, but I'm a young Marine. I want to be able to. So I didn't kind of go behind the back, if you like, but I didn't kind of go to her. I spoke to him. I was having a lot of consultations with my friend just over a beer. And we were like, we'd meet up quite a lot. And I'd say, and because he was in the military himself, he knew me and he knew what the military was like. This other surgeon, she was just a civilian who, cuts people up, puts people back together every single day. She doesn't have an invested interest in my life out of the operating theatre, where this other surgeon, my good friend, he knew what I was like.
He had empathy for what you'd lost.
And I think he said once, he just said, life's at snail pace isn't for you type thing. He said something along the lines of that. And so I kind of went to him and I said, look, I'm kind of going to come away from Birmingham and, will you amputate my leg? And it says a lot about him because, he's one of my best friends, and for him to kind of take that on and say, yeah, because if it goes wrong,
he's got an investment, like you say.
Yeah.
Are the rules around that then in terms of, to use a ridiculous example, if I turned up at a hospital and said, hello, I'd like to discuss with my leg amputated, they'd obviously say, get out. But was it a situation where you had to sort of prove that your functionality in your leg made you a suitable case for amputation?
I think if it was all done in the civvy world, I guess, maybe so. But I think for me, it was obvious through my rehab centre in Headley Court. It was obvious I was unhappy that I couldn't do anything I wanted. My surgeon, he's obviously very well respected. He knew me both professionally and personally. So I didn't have to jump through many hoops to kind of get it done and get it signed off, if you like. It was a big problem also with my dad. My dad was very much like, look, he was probably late 40s, early 50s, in Bootle, probably never seen many amputees, and if he has, he's never got to know any. And probably like most people, maybe before the Paralympics in 2012, probably had a certain view of disabled people, whether that's right or wrong. People maybe think, oh, they've got this certain quality of life. So he was just like, why would you want to be disabled, if you like? Why would you want to have one leg? Because he'd not seen what I'd seen in Headley Court, seeing these young lads who were amputees absolutely smashing life. And I was like, it's not what you think. It's not kind of, walking around or in a wheelchair. I said, I'm going to be all right. So my dad took a little bit of a convincing to kind of say, look, this is what I want to do. And to be fair to my dad, though, once I decided to have the leg amputated, he was on board with it and it was great. But it, without doubt, was the biggest decision in my life. But thankfully, it was the right one, and the surgeon looked after me great. I remember coming out of the theatre, and every other I'd had something like 20 or 30 operations at this point. Every operation I'd always started off in a hospital ward. The hospital porters would come down, grab the bed, take me down to theatre. You'd get operated on, you'd come back up on the ward, and that'd be it. This operation, I'm walking in there. Do you know what I mean? I'm sitting there reading the Hello magazine in the waiting room. Then I'm having to walk with my dad to the anaesthetist room. So it was a kind of, you wouldn't think I was going to have my leg amputated. I'm walking into the room. It's like, it was just a mad feeling. Then I wake up from the operating theatre and I'm in my own little private ward. And the nurse come round and she said, oh, what do you want for lunch? And I said, I've not looked at the menu yet. I'll just have whatever sandwiches on for the day. And the doc had put me in like a private ward, which was nice. So I had like steak and chips for me lunch, which was quite nice of him. So it's just a crazy experience to know that I decided to have my leg amputated. It's my friend who's done it. And now I'm sitting here bloody eating steak and chips after I've just had my leg amputated.
When I was a lawyer for 10 years back in the day, and I used to represent seriously injured people as a result of accidents. So
I'm still fighting for my compo now if you want to help me out.
Oh, are you? Oh, we'll have a little chapter. I'm quite expensive though, that's the only problem. I was mainly acting for people who'd been like motorcycle accidents or serious accidents at work. I didn't do any military stuff, but there's this one guy who always springs to my mind because he was like the opposite to the decision you took, insofar as he had a serious motorcycle accident, suffered a horrible arm injury, and he was basically his arm wasn't functional at all. It was like they call it a flail arm, but he just couldn't face the prospect of amputation.
As in what people would look at him and...
Well, I think there was an element of that, but he felt it was like a point of no return. I specifically remember when we were negotiating a settlement, he was talking about, well, what if in 10 years medical science has moved on to the point you can kind of reintroduce functionality into the arm, so I could be... And it was really tough to see him like that because it was clearly psychological. He was just in utter conflict.
Yeah.
But it meant that, I mean, from point of view of his damages settlement, our opponents, the insurer, they were saying, well, you should have it off. And if you had it off, you could work. And, all this. So we were actually limited in what compensation we could get for him because of his decision. So I suppose that he was faced with the same decision as you, but just couldn't face it. Were you ever in a situation where you were thinking, I suppose what I'm asking is, were there ever any doubts in your mind or any second thoughts?
I think initially there was what I got kind of fed up with was one day the leg would be okay and I could walk and I think, you know what, it's not so bad. But then the next day I couldn't get out of bed with it. And it'd be so limiting. And I was so fed up of not knowing whether I was coming or going. And also, I'd rather have the leg amputated at 20, 21, 22, learn how to walk and then be fine, than be 40 and then think, right, I need to get it amputated now. I'd rather would have had it amputated whilst in this military bubble where I'm getting looked after, I'm getting the best rehab, and I can get it done, learn how to walk, learn how to run, and crack on with my life, rather than living this, oh God, what happens if in 10 years' time it's not healing? So I was the opposite to that guy. I was just like, fuck this, I'm going to get on with my life.
You've clearly made not just the brave decision, but the right decision, because I remember when I saw that guy walking off after we'd negotiated a settlement, I was just thinking, I've not got...
It comes back to what I was saying I always use, it's control the controllables.
Yeah.
You got to be so kind of, do everything you can in your own power to make sure that, you're in the best possible position. But then don't waste time and energy worrying about, what could happen. And that's basically sounds like what he's doing. He's hoping for something, whereas I was like, nah, I'll make the most of this because of my own decisions. What will be, but I'm not sitting around waiting to think, I wonder what my leg might be like or what medical science might do. I knew what my mindset, the people around me, once I had it amputated, I knew that'll be me.
And in terms of, because obviously when is it a matter that you're fitted with or that you're provided with a prosthetic leg as soon as the operation is complete, or is there a period of rehab?
I had the leg amputated the 25th of November 2010, and I was able to kind of wear a leg on Christmas Day for like a few hours at least anyway, so it's not that long really.
Right.
I had the leg amputated, I spent 5 nights in hospital, got sent home with a box of paracetamol. I was home for 2 weeks and then I'd done a week back in the rehab centre where I was fitted with a prosthetic leg. Done that, then I came home for Christmas, had a couple of weeks at home, and then back in January I was back in, getting fitted with prosthetic legs, doing rehab, doing work in the gym. And I was probably walking by February, March time, as in walking okay again. And then I was running again by the summer. So it's a pretty quick turnaround once it's done.
In terms of the funding of all this, because I know from the experience, I've got the prosthetic limbs are very expensive pieces of kit.
Yeah.
Was this funded through the military, through the Marines, or was it through NHS? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So it's it is funded by the military. And what happened was at the moment when I'm in, it's all great. Running legs, swimming legs, golf legs, all that great. When I came out the military, part of the military covenant, they said, whatever care you've had, we will keep it at that level when you're in Civvy Street, when you're medically discharged. So when I had kind of maybe 9 months to go, still in the Marines, I thought I'll go and touch base, trying to be a good egg. I thought I'll try and just touch base with my local prosthetic centre and just say, I'm going to be coming on to your kind of care soon. So I went to Fazackley Hospital in the prosthetic department, and it's not the prosthetic department's fault, it's the government's fault for not funding them properly, etc. But I walked into this prosthetics department, it was, and I went in, I just spoke to the, it was in Arrow Park, I think it was, over the water. And I went in and spoke to this consultant, and I said, I just want to touch bases, I think you're one of my local prosthetic centres, I just wanted to come and have a talk. And he said, why, what legs have you got at the moment? And I said, I've got this running blade, I've got this leg, that leg, that leg. And he went, I can't take it on my books. And I said, what am I meant to do? He said, well, one of those legs would kill my budget for the next 6 months, so I can't look after you because I can't look after everyone else then. And I said, what am I meant to do? He said, I don't know, but I've not got the answers. And then I went to Fazackley Hospital, I think, for something went wrong with the leg. And again, they were like, we can't really fix this because there's... So I went back to Headley Court and I said, I know you guys are saying that it's all going to be funded, but I've just been and spoke to them. It's not. and a few other guys were having similar problems. And then that then kind of forced the government into making 6 specialist centres now up and down the country. That basically got a special pot of funding. I think the LIBOR fund is it, I think, with all the banks.
Yeah.
They use that money now to fund all the guys' prosthetic legs. So I have to now go to Preston, and where it's basically, there's a blank check there for me, thankfully, where there's, whatever legs I kind of need, whatever treatment I need, I kind of get because of how I got injured. But it was a problem for a while, because I feel terrible sometimes after the motivational speaking. Someone will say, well, I've got a niece or a friend who's got a prosthetic, I'm like, well, I get mine for free, so I can't really, say, oh, go here, go there, because it's going to cost you thousands, you know what I mean? Mine aren't too bad. They're £3,000 to £5,000 for a below the knee, but if you've lost your leg above the knee, it's sometimes 50 grand a pop. So it's a lot of money. So if you've been injured in a car crash or something, you might not have had the same kind of care and treatment that I've had.
Well, that's right. And also, one of the
Unless
arguments...
you've got a good lawyer like you can sort it.
Absolutely. But another one, I'm just thinking of other clients that spring to mind. There was another guy, and again, he lost his arm, literally right below the shoulder when he had the amputation. But what they were... the reason I asked you the question about was it through the NHS was because what you've just described... I remember so vividly that there was such a gap between the quality of prosthetics available in the NHS and just available on the market. Because I'm thinking back 10 years now, but even then, the ones that were available privately, the way the technology had advanced in them compared to what was available on the NHS was just incomparable. And what insurers always try to argue when someone's been in an accident is they say, well, they won't use it. We'll pay for the top drawer one and they'll end up just not using it because people don't, and they produce these studies which show that, after an accident, unless you've got real amount of motivation, you just kind of give up. So what's the point, they argue. But I always just thought that was very unsatisfying. What a
negative view that is.
Well, absolutely. And I just thought it was such an unsatisfactory outcome from, an injury which someone didn't cause.
Yeah, the two big things on that is, firstly, I think not only the technology, but also the people, I think, which kind of two answers kind of work into one, is lads who are getting injured in Afghanistan are highly motivated young lads who want to get better. So they are using all the best stuff and they are using them. If you're a physio, and no disrespect to kind of people who've got injuries, but I've got friends who work in the NHS physios, and people are turning up, and maybe they turn up because they want to just get signed off for another week, or they're not going to do the rehab, or they're not really that bothered if they're... Physios in Headley Court were loving life because they were turning up and there were these injured lads who were like, right, come on, what exercises do I need to do? And so for a physio, it was amazing. Same for prosthetic guys. It was like they were getting to fit all these prosthetic legs and see them getting used to the absolute maximum. Lads were breaking prosthetic legs because they were pushing it to the limit so much. And so it was a great place to work for people who were in that kind of world. And what I think's interesting is all that kind of, to me, comes down to it, mindset. And some people say to me, some people who've maybe had accidents and stuff, I've had a few over the years, and they say, I'm thinking about having my leg amputated and stuff like that, seeing what you've done. I've got a really bad injury, I'm on crutches all the time and stuff. And I have to kind of remind people and say, I'm like this because I was like that beforehand. If you work 9 till 5 in an office, you'd have takeaways most nights and you sit up playing up until 2 a.m. on computer games, and you have your leg amputated, you're not going to turn into Mo Farah overnight. Do you know what I mean? I'm like this because I was like that beforehand. And I think some people think that if they've had an injury and they have to have, an amputation, that they're going to suddenly maybe do what I've done or what some other injured soldiers have done. Probably not. If you didn't like running with 2 legs, you're definitely not going to like running with 1.
No, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Talk to me about that though, because I suppose splitting that period of time up into 3, you had this period when you were a Marine, you were hugely active. I know you love the outdoors lifestyle and obviously very fit. It just goes with the territory of being a Marine. You've then got this middle part where you've had the injury, but your leg isn't as functional as you wanted. And then you've made this really brave, but also very good decision. From a mindset perspective, sort of psychologically, how tough was that 18 months when you weren't able to live your life the way you'd always committed to?
Yeah, it was tough, and there was a lot of, down moments. But I think what was massive for it was there was a lot of support that I had around me. My dad, my sisters. There was a lot of support as well from the country. I don't know if you remember kind of that time, but it was when Help for Heroes had just started, and there was a lot of support for a lot of the soldiers. So even though I'd been through such a traumatic, incident, there was loads of lads my age from all up and down the country who were just all together. We'd all been blown up together. It was actually quite fun as well, to be honest. We were going to black tie dinners, meeting bloody celebrities left, right and centre, going to all the, I don't like the term hero because I'm not a hero. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But because of this Help for Heroes bandwagon and so much support from the country, it did massively help. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I'd been blown up, and yes, my leg was in a bad way, and yes, I had this indecision of what I should do. But again, the support of people who supported the injured soldiers was massive. So, yeah, don't get me wrong, there was tough times and stuff with all that, shouldn't I have the leg amputated? But I'm not going to lie, there was also some really good times as well. It was, and that was down to a lot of the charities, a lot of the Marines, and a lot of just being around other injured soldiers who were all going through that at the same time. And that's why, again, I feel sorry for people who, if someone's had a car accident and they've had similar injuries to what I've got now, but they're in for Zachley Hospital, and the guy in the bed next to him has maybe got cancer, the guy in the bed next to him has had a stroke, it's very different than being surrounded by 20 lads who've all had the same thing happen to them, all the same age. You just
getting through it together.
You're robbing each other's legs, giving each other shit all the time. You're just in it. So it was tough, yeah, but it wasn't the worst it could have been.
So were you quite positive about generally how the military support your veterans, or is just do you not see that level of support for people who leave, for example, just because they retire?
Oh yeah, there's so much more support for injured soldiers than there are for people who just retired normally. And I think, when I say there's a lot of support in the military, the government, I don't think support. Like, I'm still fighting now. I got blown up in 2009, and I'm still waiting now to be fully compensated, which is, I think, is disgusting. So
we'll have a talk about that off camera.
Yeah, that's the government side of things. I think the military in general, or what's weird is, for example, I've done 7 years and I got blown up, and I've had tons of support. Now, there could be a guy who's done 22 years, done 10 more tours of Afghanistan than me, but maybe not had that same level of support that I've had, which I think's wrong, because he's done more than me. He's done everything. I've just been unlucky that I've been injured, but he's done 3 times as much as what I've done. So I don't think there's a lot of support when you do leave, and that's probably what I struggled with most when leaving. And it had nothing to do with losing my leg. It was the fact that I'd lost this brotherhood, this life of
career
and responsibilities. And I only done 7 years. So imagine if you've done that for 22, and then suddenly you've went from being in this position of power, responsibility, you've been around the guys all the time, and then suddenly back to just being Steve from Blackburn, who now is just an ex-sergeant major. He's not that anymore. So it is a big transition, and I don't think there is enough support.
Well, we had Craig Williams on the podcast a few months ago now. He's an ex-Marine, retired. Craig got into some problems with crime and whatnot, but he described very similar. He basically said he left with psychological problems. He went to the support he could access to ask for help, and it just wasn't there. And Craig's done fantastic now, and he's gone on, he's got his own business, he's top man. But that's consistent with what you just described, in that perhaps the eye isn't on the ball for these areas, just like, how's your life got to evolve, because the level of commitment people need to go on tours and commit to a military career. Well, when that just gets removed, there's a big cavern, isn't there, that you've got to fill?
I think it's the same with professional sport. I think, if you've done boxing or football for X amount of years, and then all of a sudden, no one's screaming your name, you've not got nothing to get up for in the morning, it's like, what you doing? And that's why I think a lot of people get into, whether it's drugs, drink, gambling, crime, they're just kind of chasing that thrill and that kind of, I need to do something a bit different today.
Yeah. When did you then, because I'm thinking of this in different sections, when did you reach the point when you felt able to give thought to what I'm going to do now with the rest of my life? Because you were still at this point, you're a young man now, but back then you were still very early in your working career, if I can call it that.
Yeah,
How old were you then when you'd sort of had your leg off and you were happy with the prosthetic?
Probably like 24, 25. Yeah. I got asked, I used to go into my old school and play five-a-side with all the teachers. And then after I joined the Marines, my old English teacher said, can you come and just do a little talk about what the Marines is like? So I said, yeah, okay. And then when I got back from Iraq, they asked me the same, went in, done it. But it was just in like this, just jeans and t-shirts, having a bit of a Q&A and a chat. And then after I got injured and recovered, one of the people from the school rang me up. She said, Andy, can you come and do another talk? And I said, yeah, that's okay. And she went, this time can you wear your uniform and all your medals? And I said, I'm not getting dressed up to come and sit in a classroom for 20 minutes, And she said, oh no, this time it's in Bootle Town Hall in front of 700 people. And then I was like, bloody hell, hang on, I need to actually think of what I'm going to say. So I went and sat down with my old English teacher and we came up with a little speech. And it was, funnily enough, it was 2 weeks before I was having my leg amputated. So this must have been November 2010. And I wrote this little speech about, good luck leaving all the school leavers and you don't know what life's going to happen, but if you have the right mindset and, all this. And I linked it into having my leg amputated and kind of new chapters. And I got a standing ovation for this 15-minute chat. And I kind of walked off stage and that kind of planted the seed. I thought, yeah, I quite enjoyed that then, it was good. And then I kind of just put it to one side then. And then 5-6 years later, I start my life getting on track. I'm climbing mountains, I'm running and learning to ski, learning to surf. I'm doing cool things. And I thought, I might have another look at that public speaking because there could be something in that. So it was always in the back of my head. And I guess that's where then, but again, it was one of those things. I've started loads of little businesses and ideas that I've done in the past, not for many years now, but I've done because I think, this will make me a few quid. And every one of them's failed. Anything I've ever done in my life that I've thought, I'm just going to do this because I enjoy it. I've been really good at it. It's made me money. So the speaking wasn't something I didn't even know you could get paid for being a speaker, and then it was only when I sat down and I looked at it more and got into it. That's kind of when I thought, yeah, there's something in this.
I want to talk about your work with businesses because I know you've worked with some very big names in recent times. I know you still do go into schools, don't you? You still speak to kids. What's your, I'd love to get your view on. I mean, one of the issues that in the UK we're facing at the moment is knife crime in terms of what the events that have happened. Do you have a view on how perhaps stories such as yours and others, when you're talking to kids, can get them thinking in a different way to reduce that sort of thing?
It's such a tough one, isn't it? And it breaks my heart. It just seems to be like just a growing problem all the time. I think the problem when I go in, for example, and do a talk, it's great for that hour and do you know what I mean? And hopefully there's a few in there that will remember it and stuff like that. But then there needs to be more reinforcement. I think my talks are a little bit like an adrenaline kind of jab. It's great for that day, a couple of days later, maybe a week or two. After 3-4 months, are those kids still remembering? I remember that Andy who's got blown up and faced loads of adversity, but yeah, he's cracked on. No, that's a distant memory. So I think getting people to come in and do talks is great. I'll be deadly honest, maybe a bit controversial as well, but I'm not a big fan of people going in who have been in that life doing talks. I hate people going in doing talks, and it's like, I used to be a big gangster, big this and
don't
big
you
that.
Do it?
So it's like, well,
I did, but don't you?
I'm like, why do cool people who've got a great story, why can't they have just had a great story anyway? Why did they have need to have been a little so and so in the past?
Yeah.
You know what? So I don't know whether. Listen, maybe I've not seen any. Maybe that does work. Maybe it does kind of make people go away from it. But
I don't think it does work, does it? We're seeing the evidence every other week. I mean, where I am on this is that I'm not discounting the importance of the education process in terms of driving good behaviours, but I think we're faced with the cold, stark reality that the kids who are walking around with knives, are they in that motivational lecture? I'm not sure. If they're there, are they listening?
Yeah.
If they're listening, are they implementing any form of positivity on their own behaviours? Now, if the answer to any of them questions is no, I think we've got to look deeper into society and say, well, how do we deter this?
But that's one of the big things. And I think when you talk about society, podcasts now, it's a great platform for many people, and it makes me so sad that. Again, we spoke off air, people do different podcasts for different reasons. I personally do it because I like to talk to cool people. You know, I'd still do my podcast now if no one listened. And what frustrates me so much is we had a D-Day veteran on our podcast. He was 97, you know, proper unbelievable man of what he's done. And you kind of, not that again, I don't do it for the numbers or anything, but you look at the kind of numbers he's got, and then you put a kind of tagline of ex-gangster being in prison, this and that, and it gets millions of views and stuff, and you think that's what's wrong with kids, because they're not kind of invested into seeing what good people are, what real men are, what, you know, what it takes, what proper courage is. People are more interested in seeing, oh wow, he's just done this, he's done that, he's robbed this, he's this gangster, that gangster. So when you talk about a problem, I don't think it's just in schools. I think it's on social media, you know, and what people are listening to, what people are watching. I think that's the biggest problem of all.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it even goes deeper than that. I think there's a fundamental issue in the positives of living a fulfilled life, I think, aren't being spoken about enough. I mean, all we see when we open the mainstream media or social media is toxicity. All we see is bad news. Yep. All we see is people behaving or suggesting that people are behaving in a way which is counterproductive for themselves and for everyone else. But, you know, I mean, it's stories such as yours, but also generally there's lots of good going on in the world. And it's, if you look at everything from reduction in global poverty, in terms also of there aren't as many wars these days as there used to be. We're in a situation where we might be heading, when we finally get over the back of this pandemic, for a period of strong economic recovery. And within that picture, there's plenty of reasons why young people should commit to a life of fulfillment, which involves good behaviours, and there's everything in it for them, and there's nothing detrimental. But I just don't hear that really being spoken of. Sometimes it's just as if I think we're all treading on eggshells to give that positive message.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy, and that's why I love my job, because I go in and hopefully have a positive impact on people, but I feel great as well, because sometimes, you know, everyone has the down days, but sometimes when I go in and do my talk and you're seeing people's reactions, because mine's not a story again of crime and stuff like that. I talk about my down times 100%. You know, there was a time when I left the Marines and, you know, I was drinking too much, I was gambling too much, and, you know, I felt pretty worthless and I had no structure. But then I kind of got a dog. That dog kind of got me out and about, and it got me fit and healthy again, and I started getting into sport and set myself challenges. And so with the story that I tell, it's kind of a bit, you know, life's hard. Like, life is hard. You don't need to get blown up in Afghanistan to realise life can be tough. Life's hard for everyone. What I've kind of tried to do in my talks is say that despite the challenges that we all face, you know, by surrounding yourself by good people, by setting goals, by getting up every day and having a go, you know, you can succeed. And this is just my own little, you know, I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs and tell you what you need to do. I'm just going to say that, look, these are the few little kind of tools that I use. This is what's happened to me, and this is what I've done now. And hopefully you can take inspiration from that. And then that then gives me a buzz, because I see people going, yeah, you know, and yeah, I 100% agree. There's not enough of that kind of pushed out there. It's just so much negativity, and that's why I think that's why we're all in kind of feeling a bit fed up at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I want to talk about your work you do with businesses, as I say, in a moment. But I mean, this point you've just made about life's not meant to be easy, and also the doing new things which are focused on improvement. Well, that's definitely not going to be easy. I mean, no one just, or very, very few people just walk around as like a Superman who just achieve all of their goals unimpeded. You've got to hit challenge. You've got to get through challenge. And when you do, if that's physical challenge or challenge in terms of your career or your relationships, it feels good.
I think as well, the big thing for that is we're talking about trying to kind of change, especially young people. It's about your surroundings. So a little line I always say when I go into schools is to say, if you surround yourself by 9 idiots, do not be so surprised when you become the 10th. And it's so true. You know, when I ended up breaking my world record, yes, I was running, yes, I was keeping fit, but I was doing it on my own down Crosby Beach with my dog. You know, I knew if I wanted to break this world record, I needed to surround myself by good people. Another quote that I love is, if you want to be a millionaire, the first thing you need to do is go and hang around with a load of millionaires. You start picking up on the podcast that they listen to, the books they read, their daily rituals, their daily routines. So I went and joined. I went and got a coach, Tony Clark, and he runs with the Liverpool Harriers. I went and trained with these guys. Now, that was something new. I was turning up, meeting people I'd never met before, you know, whole new group of friends, new different way of doing things. I was jumping out of my comfort zone. And the other thing, I was always the slowest one in the group. But I didn't care because I knew just by hanging around with these people, I knew that would make me improve. You know, 4 months later, I ended up breaking this world record. And it's when I do the talk, it's not about me breaking this world record. It's about saying to people, by getting out of your comfort zone and making that effort to go and meet new people, to learn new things, to listen to new ideas, you know, you can achieve anything you want. My story when I do the motivational speaking, it's not about, you know, you need to have been blown up in Afghanistan, lose your leg to have this type of success. It's like, no, look, life is hard for everyone. But again, if you surround yourself by good people, you know, you'd have a good routine, just try and stay positive and just do the little things. You know, who knows where you can go on to? And it is all about just making that effort and jumping out your comfort zone, trying something new.
That's right, absolutely. Have we got a good photo from Andy's Instagram on him running, Jacob? Is this because you're the fastest single leg amputee over 10K, is it?
Yeah.
And is that like an official?
No, it's not fun. And the funny story about that is when I done the Guinness World Record and I spoke to Guinness, they said, this is a world record, we need international classification. To get you international classification, we need to give you an international medical. The next international medical is going to be in like Dubai or something in a few months' time. Get yourself on a flight to Dubai, come and see one of our doctors, let us give you a medical and make sure you've got one leg. I was like, yeah, can I not just do a bit of FaceTime or something like that? You know,
yes, you're not going to pull the wool over their eyes.
Yeah, so,
there he is.
Yeah, so I'm not technically a Guinness World Record holder. I'm just the unofficial fastest one-legged man in the world.
Fair enough. Oh, well, congratulations, mate. What an achievement that is.
The best bit about that, though, was it wasn't the fact I'm the fastest one-legged man in the world. It was all about finding myself again. You know, I'm a big believer on, I'll say life is 10% the situation you find yourself in, 90% what you do about it. And when I'm 70, 80, 90 years of age, I didn't want to look back at the 3rd of February 2009, the day I got blown up, which was essentially just a bad day at the office. I did not want that incident to be any more than 10% of my life. It was all about what I did after that, how I redefined myself. So July 2016, when I broke that record, it was about being, look, if you want to judge me, let's go for a run. And then you can judge me, you know what I mean? If you want to feel sorry for me, again, let's go for a run. Let's go and climb a mountain. And then you can feel sorry for me then. So it was about redefining myself. And that to me, it wasn't just, it fitted in really well with the motivational speaking because I'm not just talking the talk. You know, I'm walking the walk as well. Absolutely.
And I mean, that makes total sense, doesn't it? Because what happened to you in Afghanistan, you had no control over. Exactly. You couldn't have prevented it, but you've used the phrase controlling the controllables. And you've got to be defined by things you can do something about, not by things you can't. If you're just unlucky, if you're wrong place, wrong time, then that shouldn't define you. You shouldn't be defined by just something that happens.
That's why I said with both the speaking and the book, that's why I didn't want to do them until I'd felt like I'd done something. Because don't get me wrong, there's some great books and there's probably some great speakers who can talk about what's happened to them, and that's great. But it's just chance, isn't it? I wanted to talk about, obviously that as well, but what I've done when I've took, you know, the bull by his horns and I've made something of it as well.
Tell me about when you started working with businesses, because I've kept an eye on the sort of work you're doing. And I mean, when did you get to the point, when you're working, I know you've worked with Nike, you've worked with a lot of football clubs. I think you worked with the England World Cup squad, didn't you?
Yeah, my price would have went through the roof if they'd won that World Cup, I'll tell you. You know what, I'm the worst businessman ever. I mean, on social media, I'm not one of these motivational speakers who are posting out motivational quotes on every post. I do now and again, but it's very much just me and my daughter, me and my dog, or me with a beer, and now and again me on stage doing a talk. I just started going into schools initially, and then I spoke for the odd event, and then people would obviously move schools, move businesses, and then they'd say, we had this guy in again last time, we get him in again for this new company. And it just kind of went like that, and I've never really pushed it. It's just always something that grew organically, and thankfully, prior to COVID anyway, it was just every single year went more bookings, every single year. And it's just grew and grew and grew. I've worked out in Boston for like huge pharmaceutical firms. In Nike, flew me over to Shanghai or Guangzhou initially to speak to just 20 people. That went really well. They then invited me back over to Shanghai at their big main events for 500-600 people. So getting flown, you know, kind of business class out to Shanghai to talk for an hour was pretty cool. I felt a bit of a rock star, I'll be honest. And it's just kind of word of mouth, things like that. And I've been lucky enough to work with Liverpool, Man City, England football, to the first team, the under-21s, the under-18s. Yeah, just sharing my story really. And again, it's sharing my story, but it's talking about some of the things I've learned along the way, some of the pitfalls, and again, just the story in general. I'm kind of confident in I tell it in a good way. There's a lot of humour in there, a lot of sadness, and just being able to share my story with, whether it's, you know, primary schools, secondaries, universities, people in the sporting world, businesses. I don't look at it like a business. That's why I say I'm the worst businessman. I don't send out marketing emails. It's just kind of through word of mouth or repeat business really that I get to do my work now.
When you're working with a business, how do you take your own resilience and learning and values, and how do you help them apply it to a business environment?
So what normally will happen is a business will look to book me as a speaker, and I will then listen to what they kind of want to get from the session. You know, it might be about leadership, it might be about teamwork. They might have went through big changes and want to talk about getting over things. The great thing for me is because my life has been so crazy, if you like, there's so many things I can like tuck into. So a kind of dead brief overview of, you know, I lost my mum when I was 12, joined the Marines at 17, Iraq at 18, Afghanistan 19, blown up when I was 20, chose to have my leg amputated when I was 21, got told I couldn't have kids at 22, learned to walk, learned to run, 23, 24, broke a world record at 25, climbed some of the world's highest mountains. So if a company wants to talk about change, you know, there's things I can, you know, have my leg amputated, for example. If they want to talk about reaching, you know, potential, I can talk about climbing the highest mountain in South America. If they want to talk about loss or about, you know, trying to find yourself again, I can maybe speak about my mum passing away. So I think what's made me, you know, a successful speaker is I've been able to tap into so many different things that's happened. So when a client will say to me, our focus is this, I'll just then adapt the talk to speak a bit more about that, a bit more about this. And I think what the Royal Marines have taught me are Commando values, whether that's, you know, courage, determination, adaptability, teamwork, professional standards, humility, Commando humour. All of those things can be applied to every walk of life. So I've been really lucky in the businesses that I've worked with. I've been able to just tap into different parts of my life and kind of design a talk that'll work for them.
Yeah, I mean, there is real value. And obviously I'm interested in this because I've got businesses. But in terms of bringing
I'm expensive, you know.
I'm going to put you in touch with HR and say mate rates, yeah. But when there is value in bringing someone in who doesn't have direct, like, operational experience of what you do, but it's just applying some key principles to get that extra few percent out of your people, or even just to get them adapting fresh perspectives. So, I mean, I can totally see how you would be able to apply that. And I think you know, you've got a really good opportunity, haven't you, in terms of, as we emerge from this pandemic period, that I think businesses are going to want to be driving as much positivity and as much, you know, inspiration in their people as they can.
Yeah, just the November gone was the November just gone was the busiest year I've had for 2 years. So thankfully, yeah, it is starting to pick up again. And I think also, as well as a lot of the things I can hopefully teach a business, what I've learned most is, you know, a business is only as good as its people. So when I'm talking to people, and hopefully people can take something from my talk on a personal level, you know, you're making better people, you're getting a better business. So yes, it's great to bang on about, you know, values and ethos and the company's kind of aims and goals, but you also want to have decent people. And I think if you can inspire people and motivate people to be a better version of themselves, then that's going to make a better company. One little kind of line that I always use is, a lot of companies will talk about professional standards, but what does professional standards actually mean? You know, it's a big slogan for many companies, but if you kind of want to break it down, I always talk about personal standards. And I use the example of me walking my dog. I say, if I'm walking my dog one evening and I see a crisp packet on the floor, now it's not my crisp packet, I didn't put it there, but I know deep down the right thing to do is pick up the crisp packet and put it in the next bin that I see. Now, if you continually do that, it has a ripple effect. Those around you will see you acting in a certain way. Hopefully they will follow suit. Before long, that goes on. And before long, everyone now has raised their own personal standards a little bit. Now, if you take that kind of, that idea, that theory, and put it into a business, and everyone just does their own little thing that little bit better, and before long, the whole professional standards of the organisation's just gone up a level. So I think sometimes when companies band round big, you know, this is what we want, professional standards, this is our ethos.
It doesn't mean anything, professional
what
standards.
Does it mean?
It doesn't. I mean, it really always surprises me when you can look onto a big company's website and you find their values page, and professionalism is almost always on there or something like that. And you're just thinking, if I'm one of your people and I look at that, what does it mean? Yeah. I think that what you've just described about good behaviours filtering through your people, I think if it starts with something like respect, that's a key value we've got. And me and all the board and all management, we treat everyone with respect, or I certainly as leader treat everyone with respect. You know, people who join you from school, who open the post, I treat them no differently than I do the board. And because of that, our businesses are not perfect, but I've got real confidence that everybody behaves in a respectful manner. And if you compare that with what's going on at the government at the moment, and this is not a political point; it's a leadership point. Because what you've got now is you've got the leaders of the government, if that's the health minister getting caught up to no good in his office, or this issue of, you know, a party season being rampant at number 10 when we're all locked down, that's going to filter through the team. So what we saw, I mean, just to give everyone a point of reference, we're December 2021, and last week a senior civil servant had to resign when she was unfortunately filmed having a laugh about the COVID restrictions we were all living in. Now, when I saw that, I thought, well, you're probably right to resign, but you've still been hung out to dry because all you're doing is reflecting the culture that you've operated in for a period of time. So I think what you got there is you've got your positive message on how this can be done well, and then we got the real life evidence of seeing it done badly.
Yeah, one of my favourite quotes was from Colin Powell. He once said, "A great leader is someone who you will follow if only out of curiosity." I couldn't give a fuck about following any of them at the moment down in Downing Street, and that's a big thing. It comes from the top, and just the point you make there about teamwork, you know, and unity and respecting each other. One of the little kind of stories I tell, and again, this is why what I think's made me a successful speaker, is the points you're making are great. In my life, I can kind of put those points and say, look, this is exactly how true it is. And I talk about when I was injured in Afghanistan. You know, from the second I was blown up in Afghanistan to the second I landed back in the UK was 18 hours. Now, that is what you call teamwork. And I say to whatever company I'm in, I say, you know, I don't care whether you are the top dog in here or whether you've just started today. Everyone has got such an important role that you should never, ever undervalue your own role or anyone else's. And I say, take, for example, when I was blown up in Afghanistan, whether it was the guy who put a tourniquet on my leg or whether it was the guy in Birmingham airport who was holding up the paddles when the plane landed, if not everyone had done their job to the best of their ability, seconds would have been lost, minutes would have been lost, hours would have been lost, and I wouldn't be sitting here now. So whatever your role is in the team, don't ever think you can get away without putting 100% effort in, because success can and will look very different at the end of the day if you're not all pulling in the same direction. So being able to have, you know, a point what you made, which is a great point about teamwork and respecting each other, and then kind of adding in a real life story and saying, look, this works, this is true. I think that's what's kind of helped me as a speaker. And if businesses are watching or listening, do they contact you just via like your website or your socials? On my socials, yeah, I think it's andygrantbookings@gmail.com, I think, but I'll have to let you know. But yeah, I think it's just message me on social media, I think, normally. Well, I mean, I can totally see how you would add value in a business, and, you know, to bring a different voice to the table who's been through such a lot, but also is smashing life now. Because that, in everything I see from you, Andy, that one thing which always comes across to me, that you're living your best life, that you're enjoying yourself. Is that right? Yeah, well, I try to. Yeah, I mean, I feel very fortunate. I've got my little girl who's 7. I'm not with her mum, but thankfully got an amazing relationship with her mum. So that's worked out really well. Couldn't ask for anything better. I've got my dog. He's still kicking. He's good. Very close with my dad and my sisters, which is amazing. And I think in my life now, I think I'm probably too laid back, to be honest, because I feel like I've had such kind of adversity and challenges. It takes a lot to kind of get me stressed. I'm very, without sounding too corny, I'm very grateful to be able to get up in the morning, kind of take my little girl to school, walk my dog, go to the gym, go to the match. And as a job, I get to go around and do talks. Got a little hobby where I do a podcast. I'm not into material things. I'm not into the flash cars, the big watches. I'm a big kind of fan of time. And I've kind of engineered my life where I can kind of do what I want, when I want, within reason. And yeah, I like it. So I'd say I'm pretty happy.
It's good to hear, and it comes across, and that when you do your talks, that will come across as well. Because if someone, I mean, back to the Downing Street example, but if someone's talking to you and you don't believe them, you don't believe in them, and you don't believe what they're saying to you, it's a lost cause. But with yourself, I think that positivity is going to come across, so people will believe in you as well as your story.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I've just had obviously a lot of adversity in my life, and I'm at a point now where I just kind of want to be happy. As corny as that sounds, you know, it's life's hard. Like we spoke about challenges and stuff. So if you can kind of be happy in life, I think, you know, you're already 90% of the way there in having a good life. If you can try and be happy and find fulfillment in the little things. And I think it was maybe in the summer, it might have been. I took my dog for a walk with I dropped my little girl off at school. I was walking the dog, and it was a sunny morning. I took a book, and I was sitting in a park in Bootle reading this book. I swear I was the happiest fella in the world. Do you know what I mean? Sitting in Bootle, you think, bloody hell, like what? But just that's what I think. Everything that's happened in my life, I'm just very chilled out, very laid back to think that, you know, listen, it could be worse. So I just try and kind of have a smile and take it as it comes.
It's been great having your company, mate.
Yeah, I've
really enjoyed it. Thanks
chat,
thanks so much for coming on, and I've got such a lot of respect for everything you've done, everything you've achieved, and you must be pretty excited about the future as well. What's next for you?
I hate that question because at the moment I've got no massive grand plans. I'm always plugging the book. Obviously, the book is something I'm most proud of because that was a chance for me to be really completely open and honest. So I'm always plugging the book. The podcast is growing all the time, which is really fun. And the speaking seems to keep on getting bigger and better. Lots of speaking gigs already booked for the next year, which is great. With regards to challenges, I've not even started planning, but one big goal would be to one day row across the Atlantic Ocean with Ian, the guy I got blown up with. It takes about 50 days. The idea is you start in Portugal, finish off in, I think it's Barbados. That's like the ultimate goal, to kind of, you know, get blown up in Afghanistan together, then to row the Atlantic Ocean would be pretty cool. But with regards to challenges for the next year, just to keep up with the running, keep up with the podcast, and try and be happy.
And if you're enjoying yourself, then it's just more of the same, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that.
Thank you again, my friend. Andy Grant, everyone.
Nice one.